I am new to making YouTube videos, and I truly do believe I suck at it right now, but bear with me. So, I'm making a video about working in property management. If you're interested in working in property management, never worked in property management before, and you just want to understand what you're going to be getting into, then I am that gal. I've been working in property management for 7 years, for a really long time, and I know a lot about property management. I highly don't recommend that you get into property management, but if you really want to, then I will give you some information. So basically, so property management is a very, very, very broad term for a lot of different niches. There's all different types of property management, right? So there's apartment property management, there's commercial property management, there's retail, there's industrial, then there's HOA property management. Now, where my experience lies is in apartments and some light retail. Light enough retail to give some understanding if that's what you're getting into, but most of the bulk of my experience is in multifamily. Now, even in multifamily, I personally like to say there are three different versions of property management in multifamily. There is on-site resident managers, there are portfolio property managers, and there are community property managers. So there's also people use different names for property managers. So property admin, property manager, community manager, resident manager, on-site manager. There's if you're going on Indeed, I would look up all four of those different, and you'll be in the property manager sphere. Okay. Now, I'm only going to be talking about my personal three that they're kind of different from each other, so you'll know what you're getting into depending on what the title is, right? So first, I'm going to start off with resident on-site manager. So as a resident on-site manager, when job descriptions are titling that, usually what they're asking for is someone to live on site at their building and manage it. Usually they'll get a free apartment. A lot of times they'll get no pay. They'll just get a free apartment. A lot of times it'll be a part-time job, or they'll ask you if you have they'll have it like a dual managing. So like if you're going to manage it with your spouse or a partner or whatever, sometimes they're looking for like a couple, to manage the building, or sometimes they'll be looking for a retired couple, something like that. Usually those buildings are small. Usually they're over 25, but they're under 67 units, right? I would say if you're becoming an on-site manager, or you're interested in becoming an on-site manager, you try to stay between the 25 and the 35 range in regards to apartment units that are, because anything more than that, you probably should be getting compensated better, and not just like a free apartment, because people at property management companies, at the end of the day, they want to save as much money as possible, and also the owners want to save as much money as possible. So paying you to live on site is something they don't want to do. They would rather you just, hey, have your free apartment, like your one bedroom or your studio apartment, and you get a free apartment. As far as like anything else, you'll get no benefits, no nothing, but and no pay, but you'll have a free apartment. Right? So you would probably want to be in a building that's fairly small. So that way you have little to no work to do because you're probably going to have to get a part time job, or I hope to God, you have your own business or you're working from home. If you're a YouTuber, then that'd probably be a pretty good position for you. So no rent, no nothing. You won't get no benefits, no medical, no dental, no nothing, no pay, but you'll have like a free apartment. And then some companies do pay you plus give you a free apartment, but those are few to come by. So I wouldn't, and a lot of times they'll put in the listing that that's the case, but then when you finally get to like the interview, or you even get past the interview, all of a sudden that's not the case anymore, like, yeah. So just be very mindful if you're trying to become an on-site manager that you're probably not getting paid, and they are very stingy on wanting to give you a 2 bedroom. Okay, usually they're very happy to give you a small studio apartment, probably the nastiest looking one, and or a 1 bedroom apartment by the dumpster. So yeah. But basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be the person that's on call 24/7, 365 days a week. You are the person that calls emergencies when there's anything like fire, flood, blood. If you might have to get up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, to let the drunk neighbor in because his keys went down a manhole or something. I've had to do that where like someone's knocking on my door 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, hey, I don't have my keys, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and like they're banging my door down, and I'm ignoring it. But my dog is going crazy, and they're banging my door down. And when I open the door to finally see what's going on, they're like, oh, I lost my keys. I can't get in my apartment. Like, call a locksmith. But anyway, yeah, that is what you'll be dealing with. You'll also be dealing with having to probably go to eviction proceedings if that's something your landlord is doing a lot at your building, because a lot of times for on-site manager positions, you're not really being put in like the most fancy apartment buildings. Okay, they're usually class C or class D apartment buildings. If you're not sure if the building you're applying for is a class C or D, I would Google it, and probably look at pictures of buildings that are class C or D. But they're usually like the shabby buildings that are like built maybe in the 1970s, 1950s, 1980s. Maybe it's kind of shabby. It's not like the luxury class A buildings. I'm telling you, it's very rare. It's very rare to get like a luxury brand new building. Okay, those people, what they ended up doing, like, and if you are to get one of those luxury brand new buildings, like let's say you apply for a position, and it's a really nice building, brand new, 9 times out of 10, you're paying a rent discount. You're not getting free rent, and you're not getting pay. Right? So what you're considered is a key holder. That's the fourth one, right? You're a key holder. So that means that you are paying, instead of your rent being $2,500 a month. I live in California, so that's normal. Instead of your rent being $2,500 a month, your rent is $900 a month. Okay? To manage the building, to be a key holder, and to be on call 24/7 in case there's an emergency or your drunk neighbor needs to get into his apartment. Okay. Another thing that you're going to be doing is you're going to be posting notices. You're going to be responding to people who have maintenance issues at their building. During the day, you're scheduling plumbers. A lot of times the management company is going to provide all of that information on how there are different vendors that they use. So you'll use who they want you to use, or sometimes they'll have a maintenance guy who comes and visits the building and does work when you schedule it. So those are some of the things you're going to do. You're probably going to be sometimes collecting rent and sometimes even taking it to the bank. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Basically, what that consists of is you collect the rent. It could be personal checks or whatever. You're probably going to jot down each check. Make sure it's each check. So if one apartment is giving you 4 different checks, so there's like 4 different people living in there and they all have separate checks, each check needs to be jotted down separately. Don't add them all up. A lot of companies need all the checks to be individual. So just be very mindful of that. I've seen people get in big trouble for doing that. But yeah, so those are some of the things that you're going to do. Just take them to the bank. The bank will probably give you some slips and tell you how to fill it out next time. I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you're a management company, because sometimes what these companies don't do is they don't train you at all, okay, on how to manage a building. Yeah, I would Google is your best friend. So I would just say, just Google it. I know it's really hard to find sometimes property management training online as well. So I don't know. If this gets a good amount of views, I will make more videos if you guys ask questions down below. But anyway, so we are going to move on from the on-site resident manager, and we're going to move on to what I like to call portfolio management. This is my most hated version of property management. I absolutely loathe portfolio management. And I'm talking about multifamily apartments. I'm not talking about HOA. I absolutely loathe portfolio management. They're the worst positions. I highly suggest not to take them, but people take them because they pay pretty decently for entry level property managers. They pay very decently, but they pay very, very decently for a reason. Okay. So when you are applying to a portfolio management position, now please keep in mind that most portfolio management companies are mom and poppy, semi mom and poppy. So they're like, not like Dan and Lynn, who owns the apartment building down the street, but they're like in the middle. They're not like the big companies, and they're not like Dan and Lynn, who owns the apartment down the street. You know what I mean? They're somewhere in the middle. They manage a lot of apartments for a lot of Dans and Lyns, basically, right? So there is Bob and Sarah, who owns an apartment building. They own like a 15-unit apartment building, and they hire Goldsmith Incorporate Property Management Company to manage their building for them because they don't want to manage it themselves, right? Or they don't want to hire a small property manager, like a private individual property manager, to manage it themselves because they want to pay like $200 a month in management fees because they're cheap, right? So so they hire Goldsmith Property Management Group to manage their building, but Goldsmith Property Management Group manages a lot of buildings that are that size and by mom and pop owners. They're not by big corporations. They're mom and pop, but Goldsmith Property Management Group manages all of their buildings, right? So a lot of times when they hire people who work in portfolio property management, they hire the people who are going to manage like 5 different buildings from 5 different owners. They're non-related to each other. They're like Mr. Smith over there, Mr. Johnson over there. He owns a building. You're managing it for them too. Sarah, Sarah is a she's an heiress. Like her daddy, gave her a bunch of money, so she bought an apartment building. You manage her building too. That guy who's like just flipping apartments to sell in 5 years and kick everybody out, and he wants you to file crap ton of evictions. You're managing his stuff too. So, and like all of these apartments, like one's in across town over here and one in the opposite direction over here. That's what you're doing. You're managing all these different random apartment buildings for all these random people. And a lot of them are people, look, people like to talk in the media, okay, about like these mom and pop like landlords. Oh, they're mom and pop landlords. They're just trying to supplement their retirement. But I don't know about Arkansas or Kansas or whatever, but I live in California, okay? They're not owned by freaking Carol and Dan, who are just trying to supplement their retirement, okay? Carol and Dan are usually like renting out their home, like, or something, not a 15-unit apartment building in the middle of Los Angeles. A lot of these people are people who have like small asset management companies and like a pool of investors, and they're just literally flipping apartment buildings and evicting the older residents who had been there for a really long time because they are trying to get reappraised by the bank and sell and appreciate the value of the asset so they can make more money and run and reinvest it into another building just like that down the street. So or they're like there's some like lady or guy where their father is a freaking multi-millionaire and they gave their kids like an apartment building, like a 20-unit apartment building in like really like hard to get areas in Los Angeles, and just like, here's some cash flow, like for you to here's some, take the money out of it, you know what I mean, like you do your thing, you know what I mean. Those are the people who are terrible. They are so terrible to manage those people's buildings because they don't want to help the residents that live there at all. Like they really, really, really just want to cash flow their property, get their money every single month so they don't have to work, and like never fix any repairs. They give the property manager the hardest time on getting things fixed. And that's another thing. People will always blame you as a property manager thinking it's you, and it's not. You know what I mean? And then like some of them will be like, oh, well, let me talk to the owner. You can't do that. You can never do that. Like, you're hired to manage the building. The owner is going to like get you fired if you transfer any calls or any of the sort over to them, because they literally hired you, so they don't want nothing to do with it. So people think that it's you like not getting their maintenance stuff done. No, you can't pay for it because the owner is not willing to put the money aside to pay for the repairs that this resident has. So basically, when you're doing portfolio managing, you're just getting spread so thin. You're running around like a head chicken with your head chopped off to all of these different properties all the time. You have to like kind of figure out what their cash flow is and like what you can spend on, what you can't. You have to ask permission for every single thing that you spend, okay? Because a lot of times these properties have absolutely no budget, okay? Because they're so small, right? And the owners don't really, just like, they're kind of like, just let me know as things come. Like there's no, it's terrible. Like, look, they usually pay really well. So if you want to go into it, by all means, have fun at that. But like, you are going to be stretched so thin in those companies. So thin. I hope, okay, that the company you work for is aware of that, and that they are willing to help with the extra work that you're going to be having, being stretched so thin and having to make calls all over the place. Oh, we're calling for 126 Harmony Street. Oh, let me call the resident at Valley Meadow Grove because he's having the, oh, let me, like that's really what it is. So hopefully you work for a really great company that is aware, like this is what the case is, working for this type of property management company, because it's not my favorite, but that's what you'd be doing there. So we're moving on to the third one, which is by far my most favorite version of property management, which is working for like the big, large companies. We all know the big, large property management companies because they manage the big, large luxury buildings. They're the buildings where it says luxury built apartments, rent here. Yeah, they usually manage those buildings. They manage buildings that are usually pretty big. They're like anywhere from 100 to 500 units, like the ones with the pool and the gym, and like, people pay a lot of money for 400 square foot. Yeah. Those buildings are usually managed by some of the top property management companies in the country. I would work for them because there is more balance, right, in your life. But the only thing is with them, it gets a little bit more niched, right? You're probably not going to get hired as a community manager at those buildings. Okay. You're probably going to have to work your way up from like a leasing agent or an assistant manager to become the community managers. They usually do get paid pretty well. I've even known managers at like downtown high rises who get paid six figures to manage the building, and sometimes get to live at the luxury high rise for free. Personally, I never like living at the buildings that I manage. It's not my cup of tea. I used to do it, and then that's the reason why I don't do it. But usually with those bigger companies, they're not going to hire you directly as a community manager. They usually only hire up. So like if they're like in need of a community manager, they'll probably reach out to all of the assistant managers to see if they're interested in becoming a community manager. If the assistant manager's like, nah, I'm good, like I don't want the extra responsibility, then what they'll do is they'll try to find another manager at another building that is, that is like comparable to like the type of stuff that they do. So they'll basically try to poach a competitor's property manager and offer them more money to come over and manage their building instead. So I would say start off as a leasing agent. Leasing agents actually make really good money. Like people think that they probably don't, but they do. They usually get paid, like at least in California, anywhere from $18 to $20 an hour plus commission on top of that. Okay. Did my camera just completely like just go out? I hope not. I hope that I don't have to redo this. It says that it's still recording, so I'm crossing my fingers. But yeah, leasing agents make really good money. You're just calling prospects all day and asking them if you want to tour the apartment building. And honestly, it's a pretty chill job, like being a leasing agent. I don't knock it at all. That's actually a pretty good job if you're interested in getting in property management. I would say be a leasing agent. You just have to dress nice. You have to look good. They're very like into people looking a certain way as a leasing agent. So if you feel like you're ugly, it's probably gonna be a little bit more difficult for you, but hey, who knows? If you're a killer sales agent, then they're probably gonna hire you anyway. But yeah, if you're really good at sales, a lot of times these apartments sell themselves, so it's not like much that you have to do anyway. Yeah, so that's basically it. As an assistant manager, you're basically just doing all of the shit work. You're you're doing all the calls like, hey, Mr. Smith, I saw that you didn't pay your rent this month. What's going on? And you're doing a lot of that work. You're doing a lot of like scanning checks and putting it in the system to show that people pay their rent. And then as a community manager, well, let's just say if you've been an assistant manager, eventually you'll know what a community manager does, and it's up to you if you want to take the position or not. But yeah, that's basically it. I wanted to make this as high level kind of as possible to explain what your positions are and what it's like to work in property management. A lot of property management is 9 to 5 plus some. You're always having emergencies. These residents, like, are always having emergencies. Every day is a new day. And patience is going to be something that you're going to really have to learn, because you'll see. So um, I hope that was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please leave it down in the comments. Depending on if I get a lot of comments and I get a lot of questions, I'll make a follow-up video. But if I don't really get much of anything, then I'm just going to move on. But anyway, thank you guys so much. Peace out.